All right, let's take a trip way back in time. We're talking thousands of years ago to an India that wasn't built on iron or steel, but on copper. We're going to dive deep into the really fascinating world of the Indian Chalcolithic age.
We usually think of history in these neat little boxes, right? The Stone Age, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age. But what about that super important time in between? That moment when people figured out how to work with the first metals and it started to change, well, everything. So what exactly was this age of copper, and how did it set the stage for so much of India's future?
So here's our plan. We're going to journey across ancient India. First, we'll get a handle on what the age of copper really was. Then, we'll stop by the key cultural hotspots in Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra. And finally, we'll pull it all together with the big takeaways from our trip.
Okay, let's start with the basics. What are we actually talking about when we say the Chalcolithic age? What does that even mean?
Well, the word Chalcolithic literally breaks down to Copper Stone Age, and that's exactly what it was. It's this incredible, pivotal time when people were still using stone tools, but, and this is the game changer, they'd also figured out the revolutionary tech of working with copper. It was like having one foot in the old world and one in the new.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting, because this totally messes with how we usually think about history. See, in India, the Chalcolithic period wasn't some neat little step that came before the big Bronze Age Harappan civilization. No way. They actually existed at the same time. In fact, get this, some Harappan sites are even older than these Chalcolithic cultures. It just goes to show you, history isn't a straight line. It's more like a messy, overlapping map of people, ideas, and technology all mixing together.
All right, our first stop takes us to Rajasthan. You can think of this place as the Silicon Valley of its day, but for copper, it was the absolute technological heartland of this new age.
This is where the Ahar Banas culture really thrived. And these guys weren't just dabbling in copper, they were true masters of metal. Archaeologists have found actual evidence of smelting, which means they were pulling copper from the earth and processing it themselves. This made them the go-to suppliers for copper tools for everyone else around. But they weren't just techies. They were also amazing farmers, growing rice, and incredible artists. They're famous for this really cool and distinctive black and red ware pottery. It was kind of their signature style. And just to show you how skilled they were, at another big site called Galund, they had this super sophisticated stone blade industry running right alongside all the metalworking. So they were experts in both the old and the new tech. Pretty impressive, right?
Okay, from Rajasthan, let's head east. Our journey now takes us into the rich, fertile plains of Madhya Pradesh, right along the banks of the life-giving Narmada River.
Now, this was home to the Malwa culture. Being on the Narmada meant they had fantastic soil, so they grew all sorts of different food grains. And we found these little things called spindle whorls. They're basically weights for spinning thread, which tells us they were making their own textiles too. We even have an idea of what their houses look like. Some were round, some were rectangular. And not too far away, you had the Kayatha culture. And what's so cool about them is that their pottery has these clear connections to the even older pre-Harappan period. It's just another piece of the puzzle, right? It shows that these weren't isolated groups. They were all part of this huge interconnected web that went way, way back. Okay, for our last stop on this ancient tour, we're heading south to Maharashtra. Now, this place was home to the biggest settlements of the entire era. And it's also where one of the most incredible archaeological discoveries in all of India was made. You're going to want to see this. So here we find the Jorwe culture. These folks lived in large mud houses, a lot of them with ovens built right inside. But they had this really unique and kind of profound way of dealing with their dead. They buried them right under the floors of their own homes, always laying them out facing north-south. It gives us this really powerful personal look into what they believed about life, death, and the afterlife.
All right, so the biggest Jorwe site of them all was a place called Dayamabad. And one day, back in 1974, a local farmer just stumbled upon something, a hidden treasure, a hoard of bronze objects that would completely blow away everything we thought we knew about their skill with art and metal.
First up, this absolutely magnificent bronze rhinoceros. Just look at the sheer weight and power in that shape. It's an incredible piece of art, weighing over 60 kilograms. The artist didn't just capture its form, they captured its solid, powerful presence. And then there's this majestic elephant. Again, just look at the detail, how lifelike it is. Can you even imagine the level of skill it took to cast these huge, solid bronze statues more than 3,000 years ago?
That's a process that would have needed massive amounts of heat and incredible expertise. And this might be the most famous of them all, a two-wheeled chariot being pulled by oxen with a rider standing tall. I mean, come on, this isn't just an object, it's a complex, dynamic sculpture that tells a story of speed, power, and prestige.
And finally, a powerful water buffalo, rounding out the set. When you put them all together, this incredible hoard is still one of the greatest treasures ever found from ancient India. It's just undeniable proof of their amazing artistry and technical command of metal. Wow. So after that incredible journey through time, what are the main things we should remember about India's Chalcolithic cultures? Let's boil it all down.
This really sums up the awesome diversity we've been talking about, right? You've got the Ahar Banas in Rajasthan on the Banas River. They were the copper specialists. Then you have the Malwa in Madhya Pradesh on the Narmada. They were the master farmers. And finally, the Jorwe in Maharashtra on the Godavari, who built the biggest settlements and, of course, left us that jaw-dropping bronze hoard.
So, let's put it all together. If you remember one thing from all this, let it be this. India's Copper Age wasn't one single empire. It was this amazing mosaic of different regional cultures, and each one had its own special strengths. These people were pioneers. They were masters of metal, pottery, and farming, and their lives completely revolved around the great rivers. And, as those Daimabad bronzes proved beyond any doubt, their artistic and technical skills were absolutely world-class.
So, yeah, we've seen their tools, their pots, their incredible art. But that leaves us with a much bigger question, doesn't it? What about the legacies we can't see, the invisible stuff? How did their breakthroughs in farming, the way they built their communities, their mastery of technology, how did all of that lay the groundwork for the India we know today? Makes you wonder,